very well explained, and some very impressive computer imagery there as well. I mean, some very sophisticated work. So well done. I haven't seen much of this, but this seems a lot better, or a lot more resolved and interesting in terms of your multi-generational housing than previous things that I've seen. So I think that's good. You had an image there with sky bridges. Whereabouts are they, and what is the...
Yeah, the sky bridge is connect to the different building.
Okay, so in terms of that multi-generational housing, how does that sky bridge work, or what's the function? Why would you want to link something on the third level?
It's linked between the fire stairs, the fire stair between the two units, so it's have the sky bridge to connect with them to the up floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the effect of the gable roof that's actually split.
Yeah.
The rationale for that split is what? Is that entirely ventilation? You had because it becomes part of the symbol of the scheme, doesn't it? I mean, it's the way that roofs work in the traditional Chinese building is very strong, and it's good to see that you have a roof that sheds water. But did you want to talk about the cultural effect of that gable roof, and maybe what the splitting does, or does it improve the model? Is it just there for the pragmatics of ventilation, or the effect of ventilation?
The roof part is I would give the gap between for the skylight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it from the street and it has that effect, what do you think about that? Is that a good thing to have happen? Is that a...
Sorry, I a little bit didn't understand.
Visually, do you think it's important that you express that split in the gable roof, where you take the traditional element and split it?
I think it's should give the top roof the air change the.
Okay, that's okay.
Xiaomeng.
Yeah.
What do I call you? Miss Xiaomeng? Xiaomeng, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Whereabouts is this? Which latitude is this?
Is it near Kunming?
No, in China, Tianjin.
Kunming is in China. That's in South China.
In the north part of
In
China.
Yunnan? No.
But I thought I
in
saw
Tianjin.
snow.
Oh, there it is there.
At this part.
Oh, right, so it's well up. So that's somewhere near Shanghai?
No, it's near the Beijing.
Near Beijing?
Yeah.
So it's very cold in winter?
Yeah, it's very cold. It's well below the zero.
Oh, that's right. And then it gets quite hot in summer for a period of 2 or 3 months.
Not really quite hot compared in Australia. It's just around the hottest temperature around 30.
So it's cold temperate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's a really important thing to establish, because as you know, the Chinese house traditionally with the courtyard is a similar type from the north to the south, but they change the dimensions of the courtyard and the way the sun can come in and all of those sorts of things. So I didn't understand that it was actually that far north. So this is quite cold place. It's not hot. That's what I thought at first, that it was hot. Okay. I'd like to collect my thoughts again.
But it's near the coast, so it must
be
get up to
humid.
30 and be humid in summer and cold in winter.
Yeah.
You said an average of 14 degrees or something. 14 degrees. I remember
30.
mentioning that.
I think.
So 30 for summer
Yeah.
and minus 10 for winter.
Below zero, maybe below 1 or
Minus 1.
yeah.
So I think at the heart of your thinking about intergenerational living is absolutely the right way to be thinking, I think, about housing, so that the families can stay together as long as is possible, and it's part of your tradition. I have visited houses near Xi'an and in the Xinjiang area with the lowest belts, where there were 4 generations in the one house, and they had been living there for 400 years. Fantastic houses, and they worked for all generations. They were very beautiful. What I'm troubled with here is not your base thinking about the intergenerational. I think that's good thinking. What I'm troubled with is like an image about this housing that seems to come from some sort of developers magazines or something. I can't quite see how all the glazing is working apropos to the climate. Is it the housing that works up in the north areas where you're talking about is normally brick up to the sill height, and then the sun comes in above that, and it warms the floors, and the houses are surprisingly warm when you walk into them. My friend Rod and I thought they were heated, but they weren't. But what I can't see is the continuation, Xiaomeng, of that traditional thinking about how to make the place warm and in the hot of the summer cool in the image of this housing here. That's what troubles me, and I don't know how you can restudy your traditions in order to translate them into modern times. Well, I do know how you can study that. You would go home and you would look at all the traditional housing and study it very carefully to see how it works, and then see how you can translate it into a modern idiom. But I can't see that yet in this sort of a scheme. Right? I can see it in your thinking about the generations. I can't see it in the building. That's all. Okay? What do you others think about that?
Well, I wondered whether in fact, I agree that it's a very important thing that you're doing, because I know the alternative is big apartment buildings, and it's very difficult for families to live together and close to the ground and have community at ground level. Very difficult. And so I think this is an important thing to be studying. And you have to do it within contemporary conditions, because so much has been lost in these parts of your country. But I think, for example, I'm very impressed with the Chinese use of passive systems. When I was in Yunnan province last year, I saw so much solar power being used everywhere. So I would think that you would start with the roofs to get the solar power. And because you have these pocket gardens, it's possible to use the gardens for your ventilation and even your light. But I think the roofs, they would be collecting water for the gardens, because you have periods with not enough rain. And you would be collecting sunshine to make the energy to heat these buildings all the time, and storage of heat. So already you know that this is part of the policy in China, and part of the policy is also the environment. So having so many trees is wonderful in your scheme. You could even have more. You're not used to having so much open space, I think, in the public realm, because a lot is in these defended courtyards. But I think the Chinese policy now is about their cleaning up the environment and using more passive systems and being less reliant on coal and oil and so forth. And that should be setting a new direction for you anyway. And you've got the start of that with gardens, pitched roofs, but they could be orientated to maximize or to optimize rather the collection of water and the collection of sun. And your windows should be able to shrink in winter and get bigger in summer. So you have that as an issue, how to keep the heat in and how to let the light and the ventilation. So I think you've started this, and I think that that's the way to go forward when you go back to, if you're going to go back to work in China, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, good. I think that that's what you hang on to. These are good policies, the climate change issues, but also the quality of life of the intergenerational family structure.
Richard and I have a friend, Larry, from China, who's living in New Zealand. And he came to one of our classes. Larry studies traditional Chinese architecture. And he was quite a well-known architect of modern architecture in China until he realised he was making a mistake. And he left there and started landscape architecture because he felt that the Chinese were losing their tradition and losing their values. And you know, these are ancient values, wonderful values. And I mean, if there's one word of advice I could give you, it would be, don't follow the West. You look at your interior shots, don't follow the West in terms of the value that they put down as interior finishes or modular form or whatever. Follow your traditions. Those courtyard houses are beautifully organised around the garden. The garden comes into the buildings in places and steps away in other places. I mean, sometimes, but rarely is it completely surrounded by wide walkways so the garden is isolated. And in all your scheme, in all your planning, I think you've got the garden isolated from the buildings, except for your box gardens. Right? It's good if you've got a garden that it can be part of your room, not part of your view. Right? So it can actually be an active part of your room. And the other thing about the courtyard houses, it's usually one level. Right? Now this is multiple levels which we need to do in terms of densities, but what it means is you can't get out as much on the higher levels into the garden. Right? So you have to somehow manage that. You have to somehow manage access to the outside or access to the garden in such a way that it still feels like a courtyard house. So maybe, for instance, the stairways were going to be a great place for communal access. And of course, I guess you've got the older people at ground level and the younger people up top. Can you just go to your plans quickly? Yeah, there's in the later plans. You look at the size of. Is this a bedroom here? This one here.
Is it bedroom?
It's a bedroom?
Yeah.
If you look at the size of that bedroom and that bedroom,
This is a bedroom for the kids.
and that little dining area, this, I mean, do you spend that much time in the bedroom?
Okay.
It's just that it seems like a lot of space for the main bedroom. Seems like a very, very generous main bedroom when it may have contributed to, say, the living area or the dining area or the communal area. You know? And as Richard and Britt have said, the idea of these buildings being homogeneous, intergenerational buildings is a very, very good idea and an important idea. And I think a lot of our social issues come from the fact that we've isolated ourselves as families. You know, I'm just designing a little house for our family. I'm designing it so it can have toddlers to grand people in it. So there's a flat area for the older people where they can stay, hopefully live there. And then there's areas where kids can play, and it's a multi-generational house, which I think we've got to go back to. So I think the idea is really good, as Richard and Britta both said, but there's issues about climate. If I looked at this, I would have said semi-tropical. I wouldn't have said cold climate. Cold climate has got less openings and more to the south, right? And it has thermal mass that can hold the heat. And probably those buildings Richard were talking about, the sun came over, heated up the inside when they shut it down. You know? And those studies are really important because they save money. You know, I sat in a meeting last Thursday with a billionaire Chinese guy, and he had his developer guy from China sitting on my right-hand side, and they want me to go to China to read. They're doing cities for 1.5 million people to advise on environmental planning. I'm too young to go, but that's the new direction in China. It's being managed by the government. They're saying, actually, we're spending way too much on cities in terms of running them. So it starts at this level, at this scale. That's where it starts. And all the examples are there. If you look back in tradition like Larry has, all the examples are there on how to do it in China. And also, I think your culture is fantastic. Don't lose it. Don't lose it to the West.
So Xiaomeng, we value very highly your being here with us. Right? We have deep respect for your culture and would suggest to you that by studying it, restudying it, you might find ways to solve this problem quite beautifully. Okay?
Thank you, Xiaomeng.